December 5th, 2009, a man in Killeen, Texas, had taken his dog outside to let it do its business before heading in for the evening. As he stood outside looking up at the stars, he observed something in the night sky. He lived out in the country and could see it fairly clearly hovering a couple of fields over. To him, the object appeared to be a silver disc that glowed. There were no other visible lights that he could see. He watched as the object seemed to hover above the ground, almost landing. A platform lowered beneath the object, and three beings walked out. Even though he was too far away to make out any details, he noted that they did not look like the typical gray beings shown on TV and in popular culture. They walked like humans, but were smaller. The man's dog began to go crazy, wanting to go off in the direction of the craft and the beings. The witness managed to get the dog's leash back on, and they ran back to the house, and he wanted to retrieve his camera. When he returned with his camera, the beings and the craft were nowhere to be seen. By the time I got back outside, there was nothing in the field. Nothing. It was completely gone. I had my dog with me still and let him off the leash. He didn't even sense anything anymore. It's just another case involving an animal reacting to a natural phenomenon, I guess. In this case, a UFO that had landed. This man observed beings, and he claims that he didn't have a camera because of the time of night it was, and he wasn't really thinking about that. He was just taking his dog out, so that he could go to the bathroom, and he was kind of caught off guard by this encounter, by this UFO or this object that landed in a field, and these men came out. It sounds like the dog's barking alerted these beings to his presence, that they'd been caught or spotted, and sounds like they retreated. As he was going in to get the camera, when he came back out, they were gone. I've done other videos where I've talked about aliens or beings that landed in a field and were seen collecting things. Is that what was happening here? I don't know. Sometimes sightings of strange objects are followed by the arrival of strange men in black suits, such as what happened to a woman named Carol in Ohio in the 1960s. She recalled how, when she was a little girl, she was outside playing in her yard just before bed. Looking up into the night sky, she observed a very strange sight. High above her head, she could make out what to her looked like three beams of light chasing each other across the sky. Even at that young age, she knew that what she was seeing was bizarre, so she rushed inside and told her parents to come outside and see. At school, Carol told other children and her teachers of her amazing sighting. No doubt, most everybody she told chalked it up to her imagination. However, it seems somebody did take it a little more seriously. Carol recalled that within 3 or 4 days of the sighting, 3 men in black suits showed up at her home. They explicitly told her that she was to stop talking about what she had seen, to not talk about it with anybody, and that what she saw were just stars, nothing more. 50 years later, Carol is adamant that what she saw that night were not stars. As far as she knows, the type of technology she observed that night were far beyond what existed in the 1960s. She also has no idea who the 3 men were, or why they would care so much about what a little girl had to say that they chose to pay her a visit. Fearing she would be ridiculed, Carol did not speak about the incident or the 3 men in black for a very long time. Likewise, her parents would also not discuss the incident. Had the men in black paid them a visit too? Sounds like they were. From the story, this was a story that was related on, I think, Coast to Coast. The girl claimed that her parents didn't speak about this incident to anybody. And it sounds to me like not only was she visited by these men, her parents were too. And maybe they were warned not to speak about it, It sounds frightening. I haven't heard too many stories about men in black suits visiting children. And what was it about what she saw that was so important that these men decided to show up at her house? Had she seen something? It sounds like she said 3 beams of light chasing each other across the sky. It sounds like she was almost witnessing a war. Alien wars, or aliens ships shooting at each other, has been talked about by other witnesses in the past. There's a number of witnesses who claim to have seen what looked like alien craft shooting at each other in the sky, not unlike Star Wars. Had she seen something like that, and whoever these beings were did not want information like that getting out to the public? I don't know. It just seems like such a small story, unless something else happened that happened that night that Carol isn't even aware of. Maybe she doesn't remember. Maybe she saw something that night, and something else happened, and their visit was with regards to that thing, not just the sighting of these objects chasing each other. I don't know. It's really interesting. In 2014, 57-year-old Betty T., a correctional officer in Savannah, Georgia, claims that when she was a little girl, she awoke to a bizarre sight in her room. Was it a form of sleep paralysis, or was something else much more sinister occurring? It was October 1968, Chicago, Illinois. Betty, who was 11 at the time, was sharing a large bed with her brother. She awoke sometime in the night only to find that she and her brother were not alone. Quote, "I was sleeping with my brother when I awoke, and this creature was in the bed with us. It was sleeping in the middle on its back. My back was against the wall, and I was facing my brother's back. He was lying on his side facing the middle of the room." Unquote. Betty claimed that the entity looked like, quote, "a child alien." Unquote. It was white in color and skinny. She noted that it had its eyes closed, and to her it looked like it was asleep. "I was scared. I thought about hitting my brother with my foot to wake him, but I was scared of what this creature would do if I woke it. I laid frozen and scared until I fell back to sleep. When I woke in the morning, it was gone." Betty would not speak of the encounter for many years, fearing that she would be ridiculed. She is certain that the event was not a dream or a hallucination. "I know it was real." Taking Betty at her word that this was not a sleep paralysis episode and that there was an alien entity sleeping in her bed, one has to wonder why. Most alien encounters involve the beings entering and leaving undetected. This encounter suggests that the being, which she believed to be childlike, was comfortable with them enough to want to sleep next to the children. Is it possible that Betty's mother was an abductee, and that this child being was actually a sibling from beyond the stars coming to pay a visit to its brothers and sisters? Or was something much more sinister in play, possibly an experiment of some type? In the end, we will most likely never know. In Melbourne, Australia, a man named Paul M. claims to have had 3 experiences involving odd crafts and strange beings, one of which may have resulted in his near death. In his first experience, he recalled how, as a child, he and his family had gone to a drive-in movie in Tasmania where they lived. Prior to the film starting, during the trailers, Paul remembered that they were laying in the grass looking up at the stars. Suddenly, to his surprise, one of them began to move. His family assumed that it was maybe a satellite or a shooting star. That is, until it stopped dead in its tracks. After a few seconds, the star began to ascend towards space and out of sight. Sometime after that, when he was in grade 5, Paul would have another encounter, this one far more significant. It was 9:30 p.m. Paul had just gone to bed. His bed was beneath a large window that was eye level with the top of the bed. Sometime in the evening, Paul woke. He immediately peered into the window and saw that somebody, or something, was outside looking in. I'd never seen anything like it before, but I now believe it fits the description of a gray. I have a clear recollection of thinking, this is strange. It appeared to be floating right outside my window. Paul assumed momentarily that he was dreaming. Then something happened that caused him to think otherwise. It moved and started moving its hand through my non-opening glass window. It touched the right side of my body, at which point I got very scared because I felt intense pain. I thought, how could I be feeling such pain in a dream? I have no recollection of time after that moment. However, within the week after, I became very ill and had to be admitted to the hospital. All of this is verifiable. At the hospital, Paul was diagnosed with a collapsed right lung. He remained there for 3 weeks. I became the recipient of much attention from doctors and medical students as I could talk and communicate. I had lost all knowledge, was unable to spell or do basic math, but I could talk and communicate. For a long time, Paul could not remember much of his life outside of his name. Eventually, he would get his memory back. As he grew, Paul got better and began to excel at school. Was his alien encounter somehow tied to his ability to retain information in a way that he hadn't been able to do previously? Had the entity caused the collapsed lung? Or was it merely pointing out, albeit crudely, a medical issue prior to its diagnosis? Paul claimed that he had one other encounter while living in Melbourne with his wife. He observed 3 objects, 2 red and 1 white, dancing about in the sky before departing. The 2 red lights left, one heading towards the west and the other heading towards the east. The remaining light, the white one, shot straight up into the sky, not unlike the one he observed in his youth. Was this intentional on the visitor's part, a way of sending him a message that they have been watching him since childhood and will continue to watch him well into his adulthood?